the story about Noah's life and the things that he's done. I love looking back at history and seeing how the world was changed because of Noah. It was such a profound and a momentous point in our history in this planet. God took 8 people and saved them in a boat through a flood, which had never taken place before. No one knew what it was like to see water fall from the sky. They would see life go on for years and generations where the ground was just watered by a mist in the mornings or in the evenings. And yet God does something to really change this planet and to change people. He wanted us to learn from Noah and to be different. I like this picture on the first slide. Noah has kind of this stoic look as he's standing in front of the ark. We see all the animals and different things around the ark. It was such an amazing time in our history, and we talk about it and we teach our children about it. But do we really understand what took place with Noah? I think in some instances we've talked about it so much that we've allowed it to lose its luster. We've allowed it to lose its importance to us. When we look at all of the pictures that we show our kids, what's a problem with the picture? When you look at those images on the slide, they're very cute, they're very attractive pictures, but what do you notice? What's wrong with the picture? The ark looks too small. We have all these animal heads hanging out, and it looks like the ark is so full that it can't hold all the animals. It looks like it's about the size of a normal boat that we would be on today. And that's not what we actually read about. And that's not what we know happened. And I don't think it's sinful that we draw pictures like this, but I know as we teach our children and we show them these type images where the ark looks so small, it creates this imagery in your head that it's a fairy tale. And that's not the truth, is it? This was a focal point in our history, and we really need to pay attention and focus on what Noah's time meant, Noah's faith meant, what the ark meant, what the destruction of this planet with water meant. And so I'd like for us to go back this morning and to look at Noah and what he did and how God used him. Look at Genesis chapter 6, verse 5 through 8. Genesis chapter 6, verse 5 through 8. Genesis chapter 6, verse 5. The Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And the Lord regretted that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him to his heart. So the Lord said, I will blot out man whom I have created from the face of the land, man and animals and creeping things and birds of the heavens, for I am sorry that I have made them. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. I see this passage as in contrast with creation. As God goes through and he speaks everything into existence, and it takes its form and it's totally functioning as he speaks it into its being. At the end of every day, it says that God saw it and it was good. But now some generations have gone by, some time has gone by, and we get to this moment during Noah's time where the Lord looks around and all he sees is these sinful men. And it's not just that they're sinful. He says every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. So they were very, very sinful. They were very, very lost. They could not see God. And God sees his creation, and he had made man to be so good. And yet now, generations later, man has lost track of it. And they're so evil that God's grieved to his heart. God regretted making man. He said, I'm sorry I've made them. That's tough to think about, isn't it? our perfect and wonderful and gracious and loving God and powerful and just God, He looks at His creation and He's sorry that He made it. Have you ever been in that situation? The most sorry that I get is whenever I break some expensive car part. Or I'm cooking something in the kitchen and I burn it. Those are the things that really make me sorry. Maybe some words that I've said to someone that later I think about it and I go, I shouldn't have said that. But God looks at man's sin and He sees how far he's fallen, and it grieves Him to His heart to where God feels pained because of what sin has done to His creation. And so He decides that He's going to destroy man and animals from the face of this planet. And so it's not just that the sin has affected man. All of these animals that are innocent and haven't done anything, they're going to be put to death also, so that God can have a new place to start over. And we read of all of that and how it makes God feel in it. But then there's this moment of hope when we see, but Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. I wonder what it was like to live around Noah, to witness his character and to talk with him, to be his friend or his neighbor. Look at verse 9. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a righteous man, blameless in his generation. Noah walked with God. And Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now the earth was corrupt in God's sight, and the earth was filled with violence. And God saw the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way on the earth. And God said to Noah, I've determined to make an end of all flesh, for the earth is filled with violence through them. Behold, I will destroy them with the earth. Make yourself an ark of gopher wood. Make rooms in the ark. Cover it inside and out with pitch. This is how you are to make it. The length of the ark, 300 cubits. Its breadth, 50 cubits. Its height, 30 cubits. Make a roof for the ark and finish it to a cubit above, and set the door in the ark in its side. Make it with lower, second, and third decks. For behold, I will bring flood waters upon the earth to destroy all flesh, in which is the breath of life under heaven. Everything that is on the earth shall die. But I will establish my covenant with you, and you shall come into the ark, you, your sons, your wife, your sons' wives with you. And every living thing of all flesh you shall bring 2 of every sort into the ark, and keep them alive with you. They shall be male and female, of the birds according to their kind, of the animals according to their kinds, of every creeping thing on the ground according to its kind. 2 of every sort shall come in with you to keep them alive. Also take with you every sort of food that's eaten, and store it up. It shall serve as food for you and for them. Noah did this. He did all that God commanded him. I can't imagine what it was like to live in a time where every intention of the thoughts of man was evil continually. I can't imagine what it was like, and to have God regret creating me. I can't imagine what it would be like to live in a moment where God regrets creating or allowing this country to exist. He's sorry that he did something. But Noah finds favor in his sight, and I think it's amazing that Noah, the name Noah means rest. And so God's going to give man rest through this guy Noah. He's got a solution for the problem, at least at this time. And so Noah and his sons will spend nearly 100 years building this boat, this ship. Noah's 500 years old at the time when God says the earth's going to have 120 years till I flood it. And so he speaks to Noah, he gives him the instructions, and Noah has around 100 years to build this giant ship. And keep in mind that they've never needed it before. They've never seen a drop of rain fall from the sky. They've never dealt with flooding or anything like that before. And so Noah begins to build this ark And he's creating it the way that God says. It's 450 feet long. So it's a football field and a half long. When you drive by the stadium here in town, I'd like for you to look at the 100 yards that's there, or 300 feet. And then imagine another half of that added to it. So we're 450 feet long. It's 75 feet wide. It's double the width of this building that we're in. And then it's 45 feet tall. I don't believe there's a building in Rockdale that is 45 feet tall. And we have that building that they're redoing. It's got the steeple, the spire on the top of it. I don't even think that's 45 feet. It was enormous. The total deck area, as best that I can estimate, is about 95,000 square feet. It's huge. Tons of space. And he's told to bring in the animals by their kind. It's not that he brought every type of worm or caterpillar or every type of dog. He would bring a dog, a male and female dog. He would bring a type of bear, a male and female bear. He would bring a type of horse, male and female. And so as he brings those animals in, he does everything that God commands him. He builds it exactly the way that God has asked, and it's to save the world. And you have to wonder about all the people that know Noah. As they walk by and they go, "Hey Noah, what are you working on today?" "Building an ark." "What is that?" "Well, it's a giant ship. It's going to save us from the flood that's coming." "What are you talking about, Noah? What's a flood?" "Well, all of this water is going to come and it's going to cover the planet, and we can only be saved if we're inside this." "Noah, you're crazy. What are you doing?" And this would go on for decades. People seeing him do this, and they think he's the crazy man, but he's actually doing exactly what God commanded him, and he's building this ship because it's God's plan to save his people. It's God's plan to save his creation. When he looks at the world and he sees all of this corruption and sin and where man's heart's fallen to, he sees Noah, and Noah is part of the solution. He's going to build the ship. He's going to follow the plan. He's going to do the things that God's asked him to do, and God's people will be saved and repopulate the planet once again. Look at Genesis chapter 7, verse 11. Genesis chapter 7, verse 11. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, on the 17th day of the month, on that day all the fountains of the great deep burst forth, and the windows of the heavens were opened, and rain fell on the earth 40 days and 40 nights. On that very same day, Noah and his sons Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and Noah's wife and the 3 wives of his sons with them entered the ark. They and every beast according to its kind, and all the livestock according to their kind, every creeping thing that creeps on the earth according to its kind, every bird according to its kind, every winged creature. They went into the ark with Noah, 2 and 2 of all flesh, in which there was the breath of life. And those that entered, male and female of all flesh, went in as God had commanded him. The Lord shut him in. What do you think it was like that day? God says, "Noah, it's time." And they go in, and the big door on the side of the ark, the only door, God closes it. And then you don't know what's happening next. He'd never experienced this before. I don't know that even people that have been in the Navy or been sailors and they've been out in the worst of storms have ever experienced the things that they went through in this ark. But God was saving them through this great preparation time. And so Noah is now 600 years old. On the certain day, the specific day, it says the fountains of the great deep burst forth, and the windows of the heavens were opened. Water came from everywhere. It came from above and it came from below. And it's not just a little bit. It's not a sprinkle. It's not even our worst hurricanes or storms. This is the worst thing that has happened to the planet, I believe, ever. But God's saving his people. It rains for 40 days and 40 nights straight. I don't think that we've ever seen that. I know that it's rained a lot in the past, and there have been times when we've just had storm after storm come in, but there's been a break. It didn't stop for 40 days and 40 nights. It winds up rising above so high that it covers all the mountains. Everything is covered. There is no other place that a man could run to be saved. There's no other place that the animals could go to so that they could be saved. There was no dry ground to find. And so these 8 people and all of these animals stay in the ark for almost a year. It's almost a year that all of this goes on until the ark is settled and there's finally a point where the waters recede and they're able to leave the ark. Have you been to a barnyard or a farm or livestock area before? Don't you know what that smell is? I know it instantly. When I would go to Lubbock, there was a stockyards to the south of Lubbock. And depending on the rain, depending on the wind, there were times you would be driving in your car and the smell was so strong, it would make me nauseous. Can you imagine? I know there were ways to handle all of the waste that came up while they were in the ark. But can you imagine being in that ship? And it was a big ship, but there's nowhere to get away. They were in the ark, and that was the salvation of God. And though it would have been tough, God uses it to blot out all of the sinfulness from the earth, and it's only Noah that's left. I love in verse 8, look at chapter 8, verse 1 through 5. Genesis chapter 8, 1 through 5. It says, "But God remembered Noah and all the beasts and all the livestock that were with him in the ark. And God made a wind blow over the earth, and the waters subsided. The fountains of the deep and the windows of the heavens were closed. The rain from the heavens was restrained. The waters receded from the earth continually. At the end of 150 days, the waters abated. And in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. And the waters continued to abate until the 10th month. And the 10th month, on the 1st day of the month, the tops of the mountains were seen." Now that's when the tops of the mountains were seen. That wasn't when they got to go outside yet. But I love the fact that God remembered Noah. He doesn't make him go through all of this tough moments to save mankind and then just forget about them. God remembers him. God even remembers the animals. It makes me think about Jesus whenever he's teaching and he says, does God not care about the grass? And does he not care about the flowers? And does he not care about the birds that nest in the trees? So how much does he care about you? God remembers Noah and he saves them. There's something called ringwoodite. I saw an article about it earlier this week, and so I looked it up. This is copied and pasted from one of the research sites. It states, ringwoodite is notable for being able to contain hydroxide ions, that's oxygen and hydrogen atoms bound together within its structure. In this case, 2 hydroxide ions usually take the place of a magnesium ion and 2 oxide ions. That's a lot of scientific talk, and you probably didn't understand that because I didn't. Here's the part that I think is amazing. Combined with evidence of its occurrence deep in the Earth's mantle, it suggests that there is from 1 to 3 times the world's oceans equivalent in water in the mantle transition zone from 410 to 660 kilometers below the surface. 1 to 3 times the amount of water that we see in all the oceans and water on the planet is inside the earth. The fountains of the deep. That makes sense, doesn't it? We can see that there is a whole lot more water on this planet than just what we see. I think when we look back and we think about Noah and we look at this bit of our history, it's easy to go, meh, Maybe it happened, maybe it didn't. Everything looks like it's carried on the same, but God did something so amazing and miraculous at this time. It changed the face of the planet and it changed men. And it gives us an understanding of how awful sin is, that so much death had to take place so that God could save mankind. I know there are sometimes ailments that we can have where they have to amputate a limb, and that's awful. But saving the life is what's most important. That's what God's goal was here. He's trying to cut the sin away so that He can save mankind, and that's what He did exactly. And He did it with water. Look at Hebrews chapter 11, verse 7. Hebrews chapter 11, verse 7. Hebrews 11:7. By faith Noah, being warned by God concerning events as yet unseen, in reverent fear constructed an ark for the saving of his household. By this he condemned the world and became an heir of the righteousness that comes by faith. So Noah acted in great faith when he did this. No one had ever seen what was about to take place. He listened to God. He obeyed His commandments. He built that ark exactly to the instructions that God gave him. And then he filled it with the animals in the way that God instructed him. And he did it in reverent fear. It wasn't that he was scared to death that God's just going to snuff him out or God's going to hurt him in some way. He did it because that could happen, but because of his respect and honor for God. He saw who God really was and he trusted in Him. He had faith in Him. And so his righteous actions are in this stark contrast to the actions of the rest of the world at the time. They would not listen to God's commandments. They would not listen to Noah as he's building the ark. They would not listen to the message that could save them, and they were lost, and yet he was saved. And so his actions create this judgment against the sinful. And he becomes an heir of righteousness. He's going to inherit righteousness because of the faith that he had in God. Look at 2 Peter chapter 2. 2 Peter chapter 2 and verse 4. Second Peter chapter 2 and verse 4. It says, "For if God did not spare angels when they sinned, but cast them into hell, and committed them to chains of gloomy darkness, to be kept until judgment. If He did not spare the ancient world, but preserved Noah, a herald of righteousness, with 7 others, when He brought a flood upon the world of the ungodly. If by turning the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah to ashes, He condemned them to extinction, making them an example of what is going to happen to the ungodly. And if He rescued righteous Lot, greatly distressed by the sensual conduct of the wicked, for as that righteous man lived among them day after day, he was tormenting his righteous soul over their lawless deeds that he saw and heard. Then the Lord knows how to rescue the godly from trials, and to keep the unrighteous under punishment until the day of judgment, and especially those who indulge in the lust of defiling passion and despising authority." Why do I read that text? It calls Noah a herald of righteousness. Noah was a preacher. He stood there while he's building that boat, while he's building that ship, for years and years, preaching a message that no one listened to but his own family. Noah was a herald of righteousness. He was a preacher of the truth. He taught them a saving message, and they refused to listen. And this text also shows us that God knows how to differentiate between the sinful and the righteous. He can save those who will listen. He can save those who are faithful. But we better not make the mistake of believing that he's going to let the unrighteousness go, that he's just going to let it be, that it will go unpunished. And we also shouldn't make the mistake of believing that he won't take care and make it right for those who follow him. He knows how to save the godly. Look at one more text with me, 1 Peter chapter 3. 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 18. 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 18. For Christ also suffered once for sins, the righteous for the unrighteous, that he might bring us to God, being put to death in the flesh, but made alive in the Spirit, which he went and proclaimed to the spirits in prison, because they formerly did not obey when God's patience waited in the days of Noah, while the ark was being prepared, in which a few, that is 8 souls or 8 persons, were brought safely through water. Baptism corresponds to this now, which corresponds to this now saves you, not a removal of dirt from the body, but as an appeal to God for a good conscience, through the resurrection of Jesus Christ, who has gone into heaven and is at the right hand of God, with angels, authorities, and powers having been subjected to him. This is why it was the ark. This is why he flooded the planet. Because we get to this point and all of that stuff makes a little bit more sense, doesn't it? God, why do you make it rain, and why do you make the fountains of the deep open up when it never was that way before? So that he can fully demonstrate his salvation power. So that he can show us that in Jesus, Jesus dies on the cross for the sins of the planet, for the sins of all mankind, in hopes that they'll listen to the gospel message, the good news, the saving message, the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus that can save their soul. And so while Noah is preaching all this time, he's telling them, this is how God's going to save us. Listen, obey, listen to God. Be with me here. Come into the ark and be saved. And yet the entire planet will not listen to him. And God saves the world through water. God saves the world through obedience and faith. And in Jesus, we see that God saves the world through our faith as we go through baptism. We are immersed in water for the salvation of our souls. And we are like that ark that was built. It endures the flood, and it comes out on the other side whole. We are, through baptism, we enter into God's mechanism for saving us, and we hang on the cross with Christ. We're buried with him in the waters of baptism, and then we're raised with him from the grave to walk a new life. Can you imagine how amazing it was the day that door of the ark was opened back up and they got to step outside and they had a new life with everything new and pure and clean? There was no other sinful person except whatever they would choose to do themselves. There was nothing else to do wrong except whatever they chose. We have the same thing when we come out of the water of baptism. The door is open. We have a new spiritual life. And hopefully we will choose to follow the Lord and stay away from sin. But it's not a bath. It's not because we're covered in dirt. It's not that I've got dirt under my fingernails or my hair is greasy or anything like that. It's so that when we do those things, when we go into the waters of baptism, we can come out the other side with a good conscience, that we can look at God and say, I've obeyed you. Just as Noah listened to you and built the ark the way that you asked him to, this is what I've done. And maybe we don't fully understand all of why he chooses to do it. But doesn't the ark make more sense seeing how it connects us to Christ? Seeing how our baptism is so similar. We go through that water and it washes everything away. Can you imagine being in the ark the days when the fountains of the deep open up and the water pours from the sky and I would imagine earthquakes and lightning and the clouds, and it's so dark and there's waves and all sorts of chaos happening so that God can take out sin, and we're in the boat being tossed about, but we're still safe. That's what our life is like, surrounded by sin. And it's only in our salvation through Christ that we can be saved. And the mechanism that He chooses to save us through is our obedience and faith to Christ in baptism. We need to listen so that we can find rest. We need to find Noah. We need to leave the world behind. We need to let it go and get in the ark. And that's how we're saved. And it's God's commandment. And it's His means of saving us. And it doesn't have to 100% that we understand every single thing about it. We do need to know the gospel. We need to know why Jesus died. We need to know why He was raised. We need to know Scripture. But understanding exactly why He chooses water and every single little aspect of it, that's for God to know, and we'll understand it one day. The most important thing is that we hear the truth, we listen to the message, and we obey, just as Noah did. This morning, if you need to come to the Lord, if you need to have your sins washed away in baptism, we can do that this morning. If you need to obey the Lord and leave behind the sinful life and the sinful world, you can do that today. If you've been struggling in your life and you're dealing with all the weight of everything in the world, it's bearing down on you. You're struggling with your job or your family or illness or some other pain in your life, let's pray for you. Let us know what you're going through so we can be a family together. Whatever your needs are, I ask you to come as we stand and sing.